How you doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here, and we're back at it breaking down the latest in Mets land. This time we're doing a video that we do every single year, which is 5 Mets free agent targets this offseason. I'm beyond pumped up to get into this one because we all know David Stearns and Steve Cohen are going to be making big splashes this offseason, small and big and everything in between. So in today's discussion, let's break down some players that not only make plenty sense for the Mets this offseason, but are potential likelihoods to land in Queens as well to varying degrees. Before we get into it all, however, make sure to smash a like and subscribe button and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Which player or players that we discussed today do you hope land in Queens as well, or don't want to see them land in Queens potentially? Let me hear it as always, and make sure to not only smash those buttons, but make sure to hear from our amazing sponsor as always, our great friends at BetUS that has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Check out betus.com.pa today. That way you too use Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way you too get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, 125 on your second, and your third up to $2,000 for all your sports betting needs. And guys, we're hammering our New York Knicks tonight outright against the Miami Heat, a head-to-head matchup there. The Knicks have the money line at -120. I put 50 down to win me hopefully 110 total should the Knicks find themselves in the winning column by tonight's end in this matchup. You guys will see soon enough, if not already have seen how that ball game went, depending on how you watched this video, when you watched it rather. But I will be talking about the Knicks. Yes, you heard that correctly, fans. If you're a Knicks and a Mets fan just like me, then don't worry, I got you covered with Knicks content weekly starting tonight on the Knicks Media YouTube channel. My man Richie, that many of you guys know, hosts the channel, but I'm going to be going on pretty much every other game basis with immediate post-game reaction analysis there, either in a live format or a pre-recorded video. Tonight will be a video, so make sure to check it out, everybody, because if the Dodgers do secure a World Series victory tonight as well, I'll be live for that separately, so that's why we're going to have a lot of content coming out in a short period of time. Check it out, everybody. Greatly appreciate it. For all my Mets Knicks fans out there, expect consistent post-game coverage after every single game, either from my good friend Richie or from myself here on the Knicks Media platform all season long there for Knicks Nation. Now let's hop back into breaking down the latest in Mets land and what they hope to do here this offseason when acquiring players. But let's start off the discussion by cheating, because I told you guys, if I didn't mention it already, I'm going to say it now. I am talking about more than 5 players in today's video, 6 to be exact, and the reason for that is I just couldn't get the list smaller than 6, and I simply have to have everyone involved here because it would be wrong not to. So I'm deviating from the format, but we're going to call it 5 players because that's what we've been doing every single offseason here on the platform. So you're going to deal with it, okay? And let's start off here with the Simone Southpaw himself that everyone and their mother wants back, including myself and my mom too, and that is Sean Manaea. Now, I know you might be wondering, Wardy, you just talked about Sean Manaea in your previous video on 5 Mets who won't return next season. That is correct, because when it comes to the future of the Mets rotation, Sean Manaea and Luis Severino, I see one of them returning, but it's hard to fathom both returning with their current market value, knowing how things change in the offseason, and just knowing the likelihood is slim to happen, even with guys having success here with the Mets. But Sean Manaea, I think, did everything and then some to warrant returning to the Mets, as long as they can really ink a contract that makes sense for both sides. David Stearns likely doesn't want to go past 3 years. Sean Manaea likely wants 5. Let's hopefully meet in the middle there. I think that'd be great, maybe with a 4th-year option, maybe a little bit less. Sean Manaea, though, changing that arm slot with a right around a 3.5-year rate this season, dominated the Mets down the stretch brilliantly, multiple 7+ inning outings with 10+ strikeouts and less than 2 earned runs allowed, doing his best Jacob deGrom in an impression. I mean, seriously, what else could you ask from the Simone Southpaw, who's not only Chris Sale-esque with a changeup and that disgusting sweeper lefty-lefty, just don't show Shohei Ohtani that outside of the first game in the NLCS between the two, because we're not going to talk about that last matchup in Game 6. I know it didn't go in Sean's favor, but what I do know is that Sean Manaea had himself a career in many ways, loved to be here, was a tremendous vibes guy in the clubhouse and on the field, and certainly a guy that we would love to see return to Queens. So for all those reasons and then some, Sean Manaea is absolutely atop the priority list among other players in today's video for David Stearns, Steve Cohen, and the Mets this season. Now let's go from talking about one southpaw, now talking about a right-hander. This time this is a right-hander that had success, sadly, against our Mets, but you understood why he had success, and that's going to have everything to do here with the S, Walker Buehler. We're even going to show the highlights of them here between the Mets and Walker Buehler there this postseason in the NLCS, because Buehler is a guy coming off of Tommy John surgery with an over 5-year rate in the regular season, a 4.68 expected year rate, so definitely the expected numbers are better there. You're getting a mixed bag in the arsenal that you're getting from Buehler. He doesn't have overwhelming dominant stuff there on the velocity that you might get with some of the other guys that we're talking about in today's video, but what you do get on Buehler is a guy that fits the David Stearns mold beautifully, a guy that's just coming off of a serious injury. Let's not forget, he is not at all far removed from having some dominant years there in Major League Baseball, and then we're seeing it right now there at the playoff level. Look at what this man has been doing. Since facing the Padres in the first round, he has gotten better every single playoff start tremendously. Buehler's going to be looking for a nice payday, but on the shorter term end, and the Mets will certainly be of interest, just as they were with guys like Shamanai and Luis Severino, similar reclamation projects, and I know Buehler's been looking very great in the World Series. We know that, but I'm just trying to emphasize here that still from a collective viewpoint, Walker Buehler is not going to be as desirable of a starting pitcher as some others that you might see in today's video. So because of that reason, let's talk about why Buehler makes a lot of sense for the Mets here, because again, he's a guy that isn't going to be overwhelming with the velocity. We know that this year's fastball, he averaged right around 95, but that's okay, especially if you have late movement. This is a guy that just a couple years ago in 2021, a 2.47 ERA there in 207 innings, 3.44 the year prior, 3.26, 2.62. This guy had a 4-5-year stretch of being absolutely dominant against the Mets and many teams in the National League. Now Walker Buehler on a short-term contract, he feels like a perfect acquisition for David Stearns and this Mets pitching lab, where they have been getting the absolute best out of pitchers lately. And we all saw the great success that Manai and Severino had. We all saw the success that Stanek had down the stretch of the season. So what is there not to say? But the Mets acquired another guy that's having kind of an up-down year, with things being up to say the least lately, on him really coming into town here with the Mets on a short-term deal. I like that fit a lot. We'll see what happens. But Walker Buehler, expect that name to be connected to the Mets plenty up until the offseason's end, where he has made a decision. So let's now go from Walker Buehler to talk about our next player in today's video, and we're going to transition to the offensive end. Yes, it shouldn't shock anyone here whatsoever that we got to talk about our guy and polar bear, Pete Alonso. Now, Pete is a guy that, look, we all saw the regular season he had. Was underwhelming, nothing in high leverage, nothing with two-out situations, nothing with runners in scoring position. He was god-awful from his career norms. We all saw then what happened in postseason play. 3 consecutive games with an opposite field home run, including that huge one against the Brewers to win the series, and then a massive home run early there against Jack Flaherty to secure the Game 5 victory in the NLCS at home against the Dodgers. Pete Alonso, who denied a $160 million extension last year at the trade deadline. Mind you, that was with buying in the upcoming year, so it was really a multi-year deal at $130+ million, because Mets were trying to buy in his final year of arbitration there. That didn't happen naturally, so Alonso's looking for pretty much anywhere from that 160 to 200 range. Obviously, the Mets don't want to go north of 200, especially a guy that's looking for more money than potentially Freddie Freeman. We all know that isn't going to happen, nor should it happen, rather. But Alonso would love the reunion play where the Mets' backs are against the wall. Who was there to step up, not named Francisco Lindor? It was polar bear Pete Alonso, and he deserves a lot of credit for doing exactly that. That is why we have Pete here in the video, and I want to see your thoughts in the comments down below. Are you for or against a potential polar bear reunion for the 2025 season? He is without question a top target. And if it's not him, if the Mets say lose out on Alonso, expect them to pivot should he still be out there, and one Christian Walker. That we'll talk about plenty this offseason, I'm sure, too, on a later date. But now let's go from talking about another offensive weapon, and let's get back into the pitching discussion, because there's one man in particular that I've been heavily critical about in the past, but I've really changed my thought process over the past year, and that's the guy that you see right there. Yes, it's Yusei Kikuchi, because Mets fans, if you've been following the channel, you know that we've talked about Yusei Kikuchi for a long period of time. The Mets tried hard to land Yusei Kikuchi before he signed that multi-year deal a couple of off seasons ago with the Toronto Blue Jays. Billy Epler fell short in trying to acquire him then. Going back to this year's trade deadline, David Stearns was making calls with the Toronto Blue Jays about potentially acquiring one Yusei Kikuchi from the Toronto Blue Jays, but the value was so high, and that trade was big, but it ended up benefiting the Astros well in their short run, as Yusei really dominated down the stretch. Again, a very crafty southpaw option that's so much more unique than some of the other starting pitching options you're going to see in this year's free agent market. He's in the 90th percentile in extension, 81st percentile in walk percentage this year, 84th in K percentage, 75th in whip percentage, 73rd in fastball velocity, sitting right around 96 as a southpaw. Nothing to complain about. This is a guy that I really did not know if he would figure himself out as a starter or more of a swing man, kind of like what David Pearson has finally figured out this past year. But Kikuchi defied the odds and then some greatly, going from Toronto to the Astros in that pitching lab. A 4 ERA right around on the season, 3.75 expected ERA, but a career high by far there. And the K per 9 there, over a 10 K per 9, because he had 206 strikeouts. He hasn't had more than 180 in his season, in his regular season career as a starter. Yusei Kikuchi coming off of a very solid campaign down the stretch in a postseason play. A short exit there for the Astros, but Yusei Kikuchi held his own, and then some. Is certainly a crafty arm with a lot of different options there in that arsenal. Headline that we see here with the four-seam fastball, the slider, the curveball, and the changeup. So you got a nice four-pitch mix. Yusei Kikuchi, an interesting southpaw option I think would be perfect in this Mets pitching lab. Is not going to cost you an arm and a leg to the same extent as maybe a couple other people that we may have find ourselves discussing today, or will be discussing in the near future this offseason. But Yusei Kikuchi, one of many arms that David Stearns will be interested in this offseason. Do not be shocked if the Mets find themselves trying to land the coveted veteran Japanese southpaw to pair along with a fellow countryman in himself and Kodai Senga potentially for the next 2-3 years at minimum. Yusei Kikuchi, that is definitely a name we'll be keeping an eye on for quite a bit. And speaking about keeping an eye on starting pitching names, let's talk about a guy that I know every Mets fan is pretty much frothing at the mouth to try to land, and that's without question a man that we've talked about for a couple of years now, and Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns, you know, the Cy Young caliber starter who just had himself a dominant first and potentially all year there in Baltimore with the Orioles, a sub-3 ERA, a 3.27 expected ERA, a 3.75 SI ERA, just over a 1 whip and 32 games and just under 195 innings this season. Corbin Burns, let me just tell you what he has been so fantastic with, because it's been everything through Baseball Savant. 90th percentile in pitching run value, 96th percentile in fastball run value, 87th percentile in breaking run value, 80th percentile in expected ERA, 91st percentile in fastball velocity. He sits 97 for context. That is disgusting. 81 there on the average exit velocity that he gives up. He doesn't give up a lot of hard hit baseballs. 89th percentile in chase percentage there. 75th percentile in whip percentage. Right around the league average there in K percentage at 51%. 80th percentile walk percentage. 70th in barrel percentage. 95th in hard hit percentage. Again, no one hits him hard at all. Ground ball percentage, 81st percentile. Corbin Burns fits the mold right in his prime, similar to Garrett Cole when he hit the market a couple years ago. This is a hot commodity. This is a true ace hitting the market that's looking for, I'm sure, north of a 6-7 year deal, similar to Garrett Cole, if not longer. But unlike the Garrett Cole situation, I'm sure the Mets and many other teams don't love the idea of going beyond 3-4 years with Corbin Burns. How he projects down the road isn't necessarily well. I do have concerns like many as how Corbin's going to look as he gets into his mid-30s there and beyond. But if we're talking about a win now stage for the Mets with north of $200 million coming off the books, why wouldn't they go crazy and go all out for Corbin Burns, who would help solidify and fortify that rotation with Kodai Senga as a co-ace along with him, knowing how dominant Corbin has been, knowing how much he can carve up every batter in the National League or American League, and knowing that David Stearns is at the helm, someone who has a great rapport with Corbin Burns, because David Stearns was not the one spearheading those arbitration cases where you had Matt Arnold being the guy to really lead the way to say to Corbin a couple years ago, hey, we really don't want to give you the dollars that you're looking for, even when you deserve it. And yes, we're going to go through these battles. This is not the same exact regime that David was dealing with there during his time in Milwaukee. Things have changed up a little bit now when looking at the connection between himself and Corbin Burns. Everything that I know to this point is a positive relationship, so that's why I'm relaying this here. Corbin Burns, a fit with David Stearns, makes endless sense. No front office, GM, or Pobo outside the Brewers or the Orioles knows Corbin Burns better than David Stearns, so he knows the ins and outs. He knows how he's going to look health-wise down the road. He knows how disgusting his off-speed and breaking pitches are with that four-seam fastball that sits 97 to 99 on the gun every single day of the week. How can you not be in favor of Corbin Burns outside of maybe not wanting him long-term? And that's something you worry about then, because thankfully the Mets have an owner in the name of Steve Cohen who is willing to eat dead salary should he have to down the road with some contracts that start off great but maybe age a little bit more like milk than, say, a fine wine, depending on how things go after, say, a couple years. Corbin Burns, he'll be connected to the Mets all offseason long until he makes his decision, which leads us to number one, another man who'll be long connected to the Mets up until he makes his decision, which will not at all be quick. It will be dragged out, and that is the man who is trying to be the hero here for the Yankees again, and Juan Soto. Soto, what else is there to say? I'm not going to go on this tangent. We all know how good Juan Soto is. We have been drooling over this guy since he was a teenager, winning the World Series with the Washington Nationals. 41 home runs, 109 RBIs, a 288, 419, 569 clip for a 180 WRC plus, 80% better than the average batter in baseball. Juan Soto is one, if not the best player in the game. You could rightfully argue right now, and he's only 26 years of age. So just like the pursuit for Yoshinobu Yamamoto last offseason, he fits the short and long-term vision. To any fan, any opposing fan that thinks that David Stearns and Steve Cohen will not be going out of their way to land Soto the way that the Dodgers let Trey Turner walk 2 off seasons ago and really had an underwhelming offseason because they knew their eyes were set on Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto a year later. What makes you think this isn't the exact same situation with Soto and the Mets? Because that's exactly what this is. This is exactly why the Mets didn't spend as much this past offseason. Because why overspend on quantity when you can overspend on quality? Juan Soto's going to be looking for around $600 to $700 million. No, that is not far-fetched to say at all, and he will be deserving of probably exactly that and then some for his market value. Soto has expressed endless desire and interest, not only in the Mets, but at Citi Field to play here. Knows the players also well. Outside the Yankees potentially rallying all the way back to win it in 7, what have the Yanks done outside of really treating Soto well to say, hey, you should be here? When we all know Steve Cohen will have the highest offer on the table. He will trump the Dodgers in that regard. He will trump the Yanks in that regard. And the Mets, on top of it all, have proven their ability, short-term success here, how this can be built for consistent success in years going forward with David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza. Juan Soto, just looking at the savant numbers, are stupid. 100th percentile on XWOBA, 99th in expected batting average, 99th in expected slugging, 98th in average freaking exit velocity, 99th in barrel percentage, 99th in hard hit percentage, 94th in bat speed, 94th in squared up percentage, 98th chase percentage, 100th in walk percentage, 79th in K percentage, well above league average there in whip percentage. Juan Soto is so good that the Mets could go out and actually land this guy and have him right in the thick of things with Lindor and potentially a reunion of Alonso, where the Mets can comfortably do. The Mets can throw Juan Soto $50+ million this offseason and still comfortably spend for Alonso for their rotation everywhere else. That is how much money is coming off the books, and we all know how rich Steve Cohen is as an owner with guys that he actually wants to land, and Soto has been on that list for a number of years. The Mets tried to trade for him, but Mike Rizzo said no a couple years ago from the Nationals. Everything has led up to this point. It'll not be for a lack of effort on the Mets end. They know how generational of a talent Juan Soto is. As great of a popo that David Stearns is to get the best out of who he acquires every year, Juan Soto is the most surefire guaranteed thing to not only make you an elite contender, to really be right up there with the Braves and the Phillies every year, but potentially the top dog for years to come there in the NL East. You got to do it. You got to do everything it takes. I'm all aboard the Juan Soto trade. I'm curious if you guys are as well. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, everybody. That is our top 5, technically top 6 Mets free agent video ranking. I want to hear from you, amazing Mets fans, in the comments down below. Which players make the most sense for you and are most likely to land here and why? Thank you all so much for the endless support here on WardyNYM. Stay tuned for consistent coverage on all things Mets all off season long. And this is your guy Wardy signing out. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace.